After assembling the start of our burgeoning battalion, we've made it to the Shadow-Cursed Lands, where our army will recruit new hires and test its mettle against both the living and the long dead. Will we come out on top and prove ourselves the ultimate Lord of the Dead? Well, we got one way to find out. But first, if you haven't already or want a refresher on the rules, make sure to check out the first part here. Now, on to the video. Our lion-hearted lord tiptoes his way into the Shadow-Cursed Lands at last, being greeted by a goblin who's come to guide us through the dark, knowing their rightful place. They lead us to another group of fellows heading to Moonrise, who tell us we can use Minthara's Lyre to summon a guide with protection from the curse. But if we just need the guide, that means we're free to get rid of all of these bozos, after summoning a couple of our boys first. Our first turn is spent spreading spores as always and shoving sharp eyes, who then proceed to summon a warg. We have a couple of our summons focus on the enemy spellcaster, but he gets his revenge with a cloud of daggers taking out Scratch, although also injuring himself in the process. Flaming Sphere does its best to rack up the damage, however, its efforts are quickly undone by a healing potion, and a bomb shortly after takes out our burning ball. Woodrow is able to Misty Step up to the high ground and cast a Moonbeam on one of our foes to disintegrate them at the start of their turn. Unfortunately, this round ain't all moonbeams and rainbows, as our last summon gets taken out and we lose concentration due to burning. You know what they say though, 2 moonbeams a day keeps the crazy cultists at bay. And that one is gone too. God, we really do need better concentration saves. Guess we're doing this the old-fashioned way, taking out the sharp eyes, so we've just got 2 foes left. They just kinda sit there and pass their turns though, since it seems they can't reach us. Which means we get to murk another one of them on our next turn as well. The barbarian then remembers they're a barbarian and has the strength to jump up and wallop on us up here. Thunderwave in its turn lets us down when we try and blast him off. So we end up taking a few more wallops before we eventually down a flying potion, go back down on the low ground and hit him from here, only for him to follow us back down, so we swap our positions again. Rinse and repeat for a little while, getting our licks in where we can, until eventually this last fellow goes down for the count too. Once that's all done, we get our spell slots and summons back and play a little jig on the spider lyre. Sure enough, the guide shows up, a Dryad abomination who is aghast at the massacre that took place here, but it's clear the magical glowing lantern he's holding is what grants folks immunity to the curse, so we'll be taking that. We once again leave behind our summons to Misty Step away and get Moonbeam up and running. Since it's AoE, it has no problem ignoring this guy's sanctuary. He of course massacres our meat shields in a matter of moments, but he also can't actually reach us, since I guess he ain't the type of Spider-Man most of us are used to, so after just a few rounds of moonbeaming, we destroy him too. As we pick up the lantern, we notice there's a tiny pixie trapped inside, and after cutting a deal with her, we set her free. If we could reanimate her for her powers, we would, but alas, we'll settle for a blessing to permanently protect us from the curse. Now that we're free to do some Shadowlands Sauntering, we follow the road to a nearby protected settlement, and immediately get assaulted by yet another druid. It's like these people want us to turn them into unthinking undead. They think just because we've got a tadpole in our heads that we're an enemy. Luckily, so does Flaming Fist Marcus, who's actually an enemy in disguise that vouches for us, leaving us free to wander about the grounds and talk to Quartermaster Talli, who sells us the Cloak of Protection and the Yuan-Ti Scale Mail. The former is our Forever Cloak, granting a +1 to both AC and saving throws. Real dang hard to beat despite its simplicity. Well, the armor is 15 AC medium armor that grants our full dex mod as a bonus, basically meaning it's 19 AC and it gives us a nice +1 to initiative as well for a little extra oomph. With some more protective gear, we go talk to that druid from earlier, Jaheira, who's a little bit more calm but still tries to drug us. Very cool of you, Jaheira. We'll make sure to turn you into a flesh puppet later. Regardless, she tells us about Ketheric Thorm, an immortal undead warlord working for the Absolute and stationed at Moonrise. She actually has a pretty good idea for us to infiltrate as a true soul, and since we need to prove ourselves the superior general if we're to remove our parasite, we agree. Either way, in about 5 minutes of heading onwards to Moonrise, we get there no problem, and head straight to the main hall where the man himself is passing judgment on some loser goblins from Act 1. They try and get him with the old 1-2, but they clearly missed the memo where Ketheric announced his immortality. Afterwards, he goes off on a smoke break and we make sure to store restore their bodies for the right occasion. Thankfully, it's not too hard to find a lead on how to make Ketheric mortal again. His right-hand lady, Zarel, tells us about a relic he needs in the local family mausoleum, where a necromancer crony named Balthazar has gone missing. And just mayhaps, we can get some sick loot from him while we're there. Who knows why she told us all of that, but either way, we get going, and take a quick detour to cook up some birds for a nice XP-filled dinner. This gets us to level 6, which is a big one mainly because of fungal infestation, our newest subclass feature. Alongside it, we get 4 fungal infestation charges that come back on a long rest, and each one of these can be used to turn a humanoid or beast corpse into a 9 HP fungal servant, basically just a zombie. It's a cool ability and great if you're in need of cannon fodder, but like all necromancy spells, it's taxing to use since not only do we need corpses, but we need them intact. Either way, our army has technically doubled in size. Continuing on, we find ourselves outside the mausoleum shortly after, and our old pal Raphael shows up to lay down some sick rhymes. Mainly, he just tells us that some foul creature lurks in the dark here, and should we find it, we should kill it. Thanks for the info, pal. Regardless, we solve an easy enough puzzle once inside, as an owlbear, don't ask, which opens a hidden passageway to an underground Sharon gauntlet. Once inside, another easy puzzle solve opens up the doors to the place in proper, allowing us to veer off towards the more fungal path, as we're prone to do. Unfortunately, as we're heading this way, we accidentally jump on an invisible cloaker and get quite surprised, as I feel anyone would. It absolutely obliterates our owlbear form in no time flat, and a lot of the damage carries over to our people form, so we retreat for now to regroup and recover. When we've got our boys in tow and aren't a bear, this fight is a lot easier, since we can slam down a meaty moonbeam to damage them, while Connor takes all the hits for the gang. With just a couple turns of that going on, it's our skeleton archer that delivers the final blow thanks to his unerring shot. Our reward just past the door is 5 whole soon-to-be rat corpses, aka pocket-sized fungal zombies perfect for carrying around. We reanimate 4 of them to join the fight, and a 6th one pops out of nowhere to join its last brother in our pocket. There's some weird stuff happening in the next room though, so we buff up all of our allies and throw on the Abyss Beckoners, which gives all of our summons resistance to most damage, but also has a chance to drive them mad. I'm sure this will go great. And then something real strange happens. We head into the room, trigger a cutscene, and then are immediately ripped out of it by one of our summons going mad, which completely cancels the ambush that was about to happen. So I guess that's one way to skip that fight, but that's no fun, so we reload an older save. Once again, we enter the room, but this time with the maddening aura off, and chat with some friendly skeletons being controlled by Balthazar. But before he lets us into his room, undead dark justiciars and portals that summon more of them pop out of the blue, ready to kill us all. Woodrow goes first, so we turn the aura back on and dash over to Balthy's door, then we use a knock scroll that we found earlier to open it, effectively turning this fight into an even bigger train wreck. Our necromancer compatriot joins the fight with a speed potion and starts blasting. We learn the hard way that fungal servants can't attack items and all the portals count as items, so we can't really take out any of them and just watch as they spawn cronies galore. Thankfully, they disappear after spawning about 3 each, so how bad could that be? Oh good god, there's portals everywhere. Sharon's coming out of the woodworks, when will it end? At least Ketheric's bestie has Cloud Kill for some AoE damage on them all, but a big one spawns and starts eviscerating all of our minions, who actually aren't doing a bad job thrashing the enemies in turn, and also occasionally thrashing us thanks to a wee bit of demon spirit madness. Thankfully, most of these dark stalking dunces can't hit us very easily, even if they're taking out our summons. However, before too long, the initiative order is decidedly against us, with most of it being red. But with a few cloud kills shredding the battlefield, and our last few summons putting in a bit of work, we're able to balance things out pretty dang fast. Especially since old Balthy has the insane ability to infinitely resurrect his ghouls. As he starts using only cantrips now, we realize this chance is too good to pass up, so we turn into an owlbear and jump his bony booty, while his thugs are still occupied with the last of the Sharans. He even still largely ignores us as we maul him to death, but as expected, the kill goes to our most loyal and sole surviving summon, the Skeleton Archer. Unfortunately, he gets got by a ghoul a moment later, but he will be remembered. We get punched right back into Woodrow form after afterwards, meaning we've got to disengage and heal up lest we follow our skeleton to a late grave. And from here we plop down a spike growth for extra safety, bring Flesh nice and low with an ice knife so the last justice here can finish him off, and watch as that guy uses our spikes to finish the job. Good lord, for a fight that was mostly undead, there sure is a lot of blood here. Our efforts were for good reason as we loot the Circle of Bones from Balthazar's corpse. This headgear gives a 6-meter aura around us that gives allied undead resistance to BPS and gives a free cast of Animate Dead once per long rest. I don't often remember to position myself properly for this aura, but even if it only reduces damage on occasion, it still gives our summons some much needed tankiness. Also nearby, we get the Callous Glow Ring, giving all of our attacks 2 extra radiant damage on any illuminated enemies. This works extra well with our Halo of Spores since it triggers twice while we have Symbiotic Entity active. Since the Necromancer can no longer guide us, we get wandering around and stumble across a series of trivial trials, first of which is the Soft Step. All this involves is sneaking our way past a shadow and then lockpicking a door at the end to grab our first Umbral Gem, which will undoubtedly need for something. Trial 2 is the self-same, aka Woodrow works out all of his lingering self-hatred issues while Connor helps him jump his clone. Upon turning the Faker to ash, we're able to yoink Umbral Gem numero dos. On the way to number 3, we find yet more rats for our collection. This place has a real problem with them, but hopefully we can find the source to pocket them all. Either way, it's time for the final task. We just gotta jump across an invisible maze using our enhanced leap spell, and before you know it, we've got Umbral Gem 3. Afterwards, right nearby, we spot a pit full of rats, and naturally descend to go yoink them, but gee whiz, this sure is a lot of them. They look like they're about to rush us, so we slam down a spike growth with us in the middle. And notice something horrible as the rats don't leave behind corpses but rather disappear in a puff of smoke. What's even the point, man? The last rat even turns into a dude, just, you know, John Justice here showing up out of nowhere. This must be the creature Rafi warned us about, since only a monster could be so heinous as to take away our rat corpses. Just a few rounds of whacking and a bomb are all we need to get our revenge though. As we explore the other side of the gauntlet, we stumble across a devil ranting and raving about a song and a contract being completed. I guess we did his job for him. Raphael, however, shows up to rain on the parade, stating that since Urgir didn't do the job, he's in breach of contract, so off they go to the 9 hells, leaving us in peace. And free to grab a 4th Umbral Gem if you'd believe it. We use all of them to get to the bottom of this place, both metaphorically and physically, and find what has to be a portal to the source of Kethric's immortality, but we're not quite ready to take him on, so we'll come back to this. In the meantime, we get exploring the town outside of Moonrise and find Jeringoth Thorm, who very much so wants our gold, but we'd really rather keep that, so a fight breaks out. This time we've got some extra mud Mephit summons to distract from a scroll, and get the worst news ever, Moonbeam just doesn't work here in the Deep Shadow Curse, because it is a light. Oh no. It doesn't register at first why this happened, so we use a speed potion and try again. Of course, that one drops too, so we retreat onto the roof. Our summons start to get massacred, and as it turns out, the Mephit self-destruct ability isn't as good as I'd hoped, but we're still able to take out some of the floating skulls, which weakens Jerry in the process. Eventually, we turn into an owlbear and start mauling like crazy, which triggers our bloodlust elixir and lets us go even more ham. These skulls do barely any damage to us, so we get free roam of the place, taking out all of the creepy craniums so that the big lady herself goes down in one easy hit. The concentrated power of the moon may be weakened here, but a big owlbear sure ain't. A little bit more meandering is enough to get us level 7, granting access to 4th level spells such as Conjure Woodland Being and Conjure Minor Elemental, both pretty good summon spells to expand our army even further. The Wood Dryad can even conjure another summon of her own, as well as cast Spike Growth for some crazy battlefield control. Continuing on, it seems this town is infested with the Thorms as we head to the bar and meet Thizabald. Somehow we end up getting caught in a drinking contest. Well, we've gotta tell stories as well, but we ain't no storyteller, and boy does Thizabald know it. Our general plan was to get him to vomit on our summons, which would knock him out for a round after a few times, but even when they're actively punching him, he refused to acknowledge them. So we end up using our Dryad to Spike Growth the bar's other patrons to dish out some damage and have our other various summons finish them off. All the while we lure Thizabald outside where we can more easily kite him. Once our minions have slaughtered the local drunkards, it's just our gang and Thizabald, who's stuck on a route and can't actually reach us. Fast forward a bajillion rounds of the gang pelting him with whatever itty bits of damage don't get blocked by his immunities, and thankfully, at long last, we'll never have to look at his ugly mug ever again. Unfortunately, before we can continue exploring, we need more bodies to reanimate, so we take a look inside Moonrise's prisons. There's some folks ripe for the slaughter in here, but first, with a strength elixir, we've got to take out any scrying eyes. Then we do the same to all the guards around the place, with the exception of the warden, who we jump the old-fashioned way. After shoving her down the ladder and blasting spores in her face till she dies, we get the Spellcrux Amulet. This little trinket lets us once per long rest restore any spell slot we have, basically giving us an extra of our highest level slot for summoning purposes. What we really came here for is the prisoner corpses, so at last we line them up and shoot them down just to take them with us. With that goal down, we get ready to explore the rest of the town by upcasting Animate Dead to summon 3 whole skeleton archers without using any bodies, since the Thorn Mausoleum lets us ignore the corpse requirement. We also summon our Dryad, who summons her Woodrow, get the fungal zombies to join the party too, and use a scroll of Conjure Elemental to bring out an Earth Elemental. The squad can certainly get bigger, but for now this is good enough, as we track down the last of the Thorms, Dr. Malice Thorm. For some reason, he doesn't agree when we tell him he should get all his nurses to kill each other, and instead tries to kill us, so a tussle begins. To make sure the fiesta is bumpin', we summon the unlife of the party, Connor, and then skedaddle up the nearby stairs. One of the nurses still manages to paralyze us with some poison, but our Dryad is able to entangle most of them, letting the rest of the posse try and clean up the nurses. On round 2, we get our archers in position on the balcony above, where they're free to rain arrows down on the folks below. And during the same round, the nurses start getting knocked down. Once we can actually move again, we activate Falara Louv, finish off another nurse, and keep our minions focusing fire on the good doctor's goons. The last remaining sister does her best to avenge her gal pals, but she too is sent to urgent care in the following turns. Unfortunately, Malice can patch them back into working order as a bonus action, but our archers are always there to knock them right back down again. So the rest of our brutal battalion is there to deliver a non-stop 1v10 beatdown to Shar's tankiest doctor, who does his best to whittle down our ranks in turn. When he eventually tries to escape the mosh pit, our Earth Elemental's opportunity attack knocks him prone and ends his turn for him. There really is no escape for this poor old medical malpractitioner. The next day, we wrangle up the squad to go body collecting again. This time, we've got an Air Elemental joining us instead of Earth, and our bodies are coming from the Harpers at the Last Light Inn. Unfortunately, as we're fleeing the scene, we get spotted and they instantly try and kill us without even seeing the body of their buddy. Woodrow immediately runs at Mach 10 into the woods to retreat back to camp, but our summons don't join us and they actually can't flee at all, so we do what any good commander would do. We throw ourselves into the midst to save our troops. We direct our ranged battalion to open fire at anything that moves. Anyone capable of constructing defenses is set to barricade the premises and secure possible entrances. The Air Elemental rushes to the other side to cut off enemy bogies attempting to flank, while Woodrow sets obstacles to stop further attempts. Our first line of defense is Best Boy Scratch waiting for melee combatants. Meanwhile, ranged assailants start firing through the windows, so our own archers fire back at will. The whole Last Light knows we're here now, and they're all making their way down to us. But our army is the best of the best. With highly trained corpses and the power of the elements on our side, no one will conquer territory that we've entrenched ourselves in. That is, until they start doing just that, and whittle down our front lines. Then, suddenly, Marcus, who is about 3 stories above us right now, lets out a deathly bellow that summons a host of demons. Just like that, our boys in green are saved as attention shifts to the invading infernal infantry. A second later, Marcus's mates kidnap Isabel. The protective barrier around the Last Light Inn falls, and Jahira seems to think that we're allies and gives us a rallying, heartwarming speech as now we face the Last Light but undead. This last showdown proves to be too much for our troops though, as we got teleported out of our defensive encampment and now we're getting picked off. Thankfully, a Scroll of Cloudkill is all we really need to destroy the enemies. And at the very least, Jaheira gets taken out as well, which sure makes me feel better about this situation. Just a few more Cloudkills reduce what remains of the Harpers to foaming corpses, and a few casts of Moonbeam take out the Shadow Creepers that popped up as well. Our boys may have sacrificed their lives in the line of duty, but with all these corpses laying about, it won't be hard to rebuild them. Their sacrifices were also not in vain, as we get level 8, granting another 4th level spell slot for summoning goodness, and a second feat in the form of Warcaster. This handy fella grants the ability to cast Shocking Grasp as an opportunity attack, and more importantly, gives us advantage on all concentration saving throws. So we won't have to worry nearly as much about stuff like Moonbeam dropping off. Now that we have all the bodies a boy could ask for, we get preparing for the end, starting by opening this hidden passageway in the center of town to a secret Sharan Sanctuary, wherein we make a saving throw for each mental stat, and as we pass each one we get a +5 to them until our next long rest. Then we pray at a Sharan shrine in the Gauntlet to give ourselves resistance to all necrotic damage also till our next rest. And finally we descend into the portal at the very depths of this place, plunging into it and waking in an impossible prison in the Shadowfell. At the bottom of this place is a figure known as the Night Song, the source of Ketheric's immortality. When she kneels to us and pledges her help against Ketheric, we agree to set her free. And so, after years of imprisonment, the Night Song is no more, and Dame Aelin, demigod daughter of Selûne, joins our army. And, well, she says it best herself.
Ketheric Thorm must die.
Although I doubt she'll be a long stay in the army, since she's easily influenced by the sight of all the Harper corpses for some reason. Ah well, once the rest of our troops make it to Moonrise, we have the Dryad precast Spike Growth and then initiate the war. Woodrow starts with a Misty Step scroll to bait out any counterspells, then we use a 3rd level Moonbeam to no one's surprise. Our ranged battalion is right there with us, peppering the enemy's front lines, before withdrawing and closing the door so we can't be targeted. Our abundant absolutist adversaries mostly just pass their turns for fear of the spikes, so to keep them up we have our Dryad run as far away as possible. Then a select few build up their courage and take the plunge in an attempt to reach us. We're able to take out this violent vanguard without trouble, and Moonbeam starts taking out the back line too. Knowing something needs to be done, the rest of the enemies finally start approaching. Thus we have our Dryad cast another Spike Growth just in front of them again to really ruin their day. With this, Zarel is able to get close enough to use a black hole, unfortunately, slowing most of our damage dealers. But even slowed, our snipers have incredible accuracy, landing a crit to take out a paladin that was far too close for comfort. Their ranged soldiers start laying down some fire too, all directed towards our Wood, arguably the most replaceable of all of our summons. A second black hole breaks our ranks even further, but since Moonbeam has been weakening Zarel, our air elemental finishes her off with its guaranteed range damage. Now we get to easily cut down the rest of this group as they kinda just fall apart to Moonbeam, as well as our amazing archers, and of course Spike Growth tearing them to bits. Even the last one can find no better way out than joining his allies as mulch beneath said growth. Oh, and there's 2 more dudes back here who decide now is the best time to fight, but yeah, I don't know what they expect to be able to do against us after seeing that display. Likewise upstairs, there's another group of baddies, this time with Marcus deciding to show up. So we boot up the old Moonbeam to complement our Dryad Spike Growth. However, the kidnapping traitor can fly over it and has a massive AoE attack that severely damages most of our summons. And it's a bonus action, so he still gets to attack us afterwards, but at the very least a shield blow knocks him prone. Our minions do their best to focus fire on him, but the nearby Necromancer Misty steps over the Spike Growth and fireballs all but our air elemental back into a pile of bones. Either way, we've got to take out one of these guys and settle on Marcus, which is especially annoying because his AoE also heals him for a bunch. While the Necromites can't do much to us, they sure can pelt down our Gasthew goon. As a small concession, the Necromancer and Marcus are now close enough to Moonbeam the both of them at the same time. The Winged Menace then follows us downstairs and keeps wailing, both literally and with his sword, leaving the Necromites to dash straight through our Moonbeam to get to us. We try to finally take him out next turn, but our beam just kinda misses. I'm assuming this is due to weird stair shenanigans as always. Because of this, he gets to deal a bunch of damage damage to us and break our concentration, but at the very least our elemental is able to do the last bit of damage we needed. One last fireball is almost enough to do us in, but we miraculously make the save, then the necromites deliver the final blow to our sole surviving pal. It was touch and go for a moment, but a healing potion, followed by a 4th level Moonbeam, gets us back to where we need to be, cleaning up both the necromancer and her necromites in just a couple casts. Before we head up to the roof to confront Ketheric, we get all of our fellows back in working order, and I mean all of them, and of course we also gotta buff them up with Longstrider too. We also take a moment to use an Angelic Slumber Potion to restore our spell slots in the midst of all that, and learned that it refreshes fungal infestation charges, which is why we end up with so many of them. Lastly, we activate Falara Louv and get going up there. Ketheric doesn't seem too happy about the fact that we've ruined his immortality and created a much cooler army than his. And as he's prattling on about his master plan being ruined by us meddling kids, Aelin shows up to join us at last. With the battalion at full force, our showdown starts. We're up first and immediately cast Hold Person on the caster that can fireball our merry band. Then we send in the boys to get a clobbering so that she has no chance to do anything, instantly taking her out. A Bloodlust Elixir gives us a second action to get a Moonbeam going too. Since we're scared of getting smote by Ketheric, we also run way back and hide in a corner, who has the fun ability to summon a sort of undead cocoon that is bugged and doesn't join combat, which means after a few moments it hatches and damages everyone nearby, aka free AoE damage on all of our summons. At least Dame Aelin is taking out some necromites, while tanking like crazy. Our melee summons go after Squire, avoiding the necromites' armor of Agathis, and whenever we can we chip away at Papa Thorm with both Moonbeams and our elemental, and our archers try and thin down our foe's skeletal squadron. Divine Smites rain down on our angelic follower, but she stays standing. A moment later, a zombie takes out Squire with an opportunity attack, and the Azer we summoned accidentally burns Aelin just a wee bit. Since it's just the necromites and the big man, everyone focuses fire on said head honcho for a couple rounds, and he just can't take out our horde quickly enough to avoid being sent to a cutscene. Lucky for him, this is a villain cutscene, which means he gets to summon a tentacle to whack Aelin with and teleport her away to the depths below while we just kind of watch, I suppose. The necromites are easily cleaned up without a struggle, and then we plunge ourselves into a big ol' hole and wake up in an illithid colony. Once we're exploring, we find plenty of walking sacks of XP in the form of intellect devourers. One of them is a little different though. It's our old friend Us from way back at the start of our journey. They give us the ability to call them as an action once per short rest, and like that our army grows ever larger. Also in this place is a room filled to the brim with fiends and undead, but these fellas don't stand a chance against our forces. Past this room is a puzzle that is easily solved and opens a closed door upon completion. In here is a brain in a jar that we stick inside of a skin sack so we can communicate with it, and when we do, they ask us to purge their mind in return for teaching us a technique. It doesn't really cost us anything, so we oblige and get the Githzerai Mind Barrier permanent buff, granting advantage on all intelligence saving throws for the rest of our adventures. Past that, there's not much more to do than summon all of our fellows and buff them up with a Longstrider. We also briefly swap to the Sentinel Shield for this fight and down an Elixir of Heroism to boost our saving throws. Then we corral the gang onto an elevator and descend to General Thorm. When we arrive at the bottom though, we find Gortash and Orin, the other two chosen of the Absolute, who as it turns out are controlling the Absolute's true form, that of an Elder Brain. It's all very bad news bears, but at the very least the brain dips, taking Gortash and Orin with it. Before starting this tussle, we turn scratching ourselves invisible and down a couple flying potions. This way we can get Scratch next to Aelin and Woodrow next to this Mind Flayer. Then we shank it for a surprise round, but first Ketheric has to monologue a little bit. After that though, our two armies clash. First, Scratch frees Aelin so the big man isn't immortal, then we down a speed potion to huck a haste spore grenade near our goons. That way, as they come into combat, they can get into position way faster. Most of the battalion uses this to go after the Illithid, weakening it as much as they can. However, some also split off to go for Isabel, who is also here, but neither of them are here for long. Our melee troops get sent to deal with the Intellect Devourers, who end up turning into yet more melee troops. To mix things up for once, on the next round we do a Heat Metal on Ketheric, but kinda instantly regret not doing a Moonbeam instead. Now we have anyone with a reasonable chance to hit the big man focus all of their attacks on him, issuing a deadly order, if you will. Unfortunately, this results in a Mud Mephit getting splattered. Everyone else is busy bullying either either the Necromites on one side of the arena or the Sentient Brains on the other. Well, Merkel's Chosen can summon more goons. This time they're actually in initiative order, so they're easy enough to spawn camp. And with no one else in the way, we're all free to obliterate this lone general, showing what true command looks like. However, gloating over our victory makes us lower our defenses, a rookie mistake that lets the big man yeet himself into a pit. Normally not the worst thing to happen to our enemies. This time, however, it seems to have turned him into the god of the dead. Let's see if he lives up to the hype. We do our best to surround him with the fellas, fire off a darkness arrow to keep him blinded, and use another heat metal and pray that it gets him dropping his scythe. It does not, and yeah, that's not a sustainable tactic. Instead, we change strategies, having our melee minions that can actually attack items obliterate the skeletal cocoons. Our melee units that can't do that end up face tanking the scythe, which prevents the apostle from using his map-wide AoE attack. General Winterspore also conjures the ever-beloved Moonbeam to tick down Merkel's HP, and our ranged units continue to pelt from afar. At this point, we realize we can resummon Connor every turn to tank the scythe, and use a stream of darkness arrows to block any ranged attacks, effectively completely negating everything this boss can do. So, bit by bit, with the whole squad working their assigned roles, and poor Connor definitely getting the hardest of them all, we slowly but surely whittle him down. Now that's how you command an army, General Thorm. Of course, we let our minion Aelin get some extra hits in after the fact to keep morale up, followed by looting the netherstone he was using to command the Elder Brain. All of our efforts have gotten us level 9, and along with it, 5th level spells. Most notably, we gain the ability to cast Conjure Elemental without worrying about scrolls, so all the vendors in the land can sit at ease for now. And now we're ready to head to Baldur's Gate, where the last leg of our journey awaits, alongside more strength and enough troops to make the ground quake as we march. Tremble in fear, all those who face the mighty General Winterspore. Thank you all so much for watching Act 2 of this little playthrough. While I'm hard at work editing this run, I've also been streaming the Rogue run every Sunday and Monday, so tune in for that. As a side note, I'm now an affiliate of Game Life Coaching as well, so if you're interested in supporting the channel and you're having a hard time motivating yourself to reach a goal, go check out the link in the description. And as always, a special thanks to our Storyteller tier members, Bunny Warren, Damon, Larry Renzokukin, Shirtles, Mark Rainbow, Vivian, Garrett Sapp, Rat King, Blaze Lays, Saturn Girl Pining, Lovely Velvet, Apricot Antlers, Kamui, Beltfed Joe, Lumina, Chance Hine, Steven SSD, Game Life Coaching, El Guardia, Cluck Vader, Alara Luna, and Achilles the Spartan.